Swinburne University of Technology.
In this video we're going to look a little bit more at functions, and so some of the different functions that we have in R and how we go about running a function. So a function is a set of code inside R that's going to do something, and when we see some R code we'll know that something is a function because it's going to have some round brackets after it. So the first one that we're going to look at is called the rep function, and so the rep function basically lets us repeat some value or sets of values. So the first thing we put into it is the thing that's going to be repeated, and the second thing that we put into it is how many times it's going to be repeated. So if we go rep 2, 3, it's going to repeat the number 2 3 times. Anytime we're using a function and we can't remember or we're not quite sure what goes inside the bracket, we can just type in either help or question mark, and that will bring us up our help. And so you can see here rep, and so as I was saying we've got a value and then a number of times. In the help, normally when we scroll to the end it is going to give us examples, and this can be really handy for getting to grips with what a function does by looking through and in fact copying and pasting and actually running some of the examples to see how the function works and how you put different things into it. So that was a pretty simple example. We can make our rep much more complex. Something that's quite handy is the up arrow lets us cycle through previous things that we have typed in. So let's suppose that instead of having just the number 2, instead we had a vector. So maybe we had the numbers from 1 to 3, and so now we need to say how many times we want each one to repeat. So what we can do is we could run it like this, and we can see that it's gone 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3. But we could also maybe do something that's a little bit more clever, and maybe I actually want to repeat the number 1 3 times, then 2 3 times, then 3 3 times, and so I can put in my how many times each thing is repeated like that. We can even try and be more clever, and we can put functions inside functions. So instead of making 3 3 3 like this, I can put a rep function inside my rep function. So it's starting to get a little bit like the matrix, and I want to repeat the number 3 3 times, and then that's going to happen, and then we're going to move to the outside brackets, and we're basically going to get the same effect that we had previously. So this, sometimes we would want to set up, maybe if you're doing experimental design and you need to set up different variables and different factors and things like that, this can be a really handy way of generating a vector which has particular values in a particular order in it. Okay, another function which is going to be quite handy to you, or another set of functions, is the probability functions. So R has all of your major statistical distributions, and for each one there's a set of functions with different letters on the front. So the first one is the random. So if I maybe wanted a normal distribution and I wanted some random numbers from a normal distribution, then I can go R norm, and R norm I can put in how many numbers I want, and that is going to give me 100 random numbers from a standard normal distribution, so a mean of 0, standard deviation of 1. We can type question mark, and we can see, here we go, we've got R norm. If we just put in that first figure, it's going to give us a number of random numbers, but I can also put in mean equals and SD equals to change the mean and the standard deviation of that distribution. So we also have D, P, and Q. So the Q is going to take a probability, giving me a normal distribution value. The P is going to do the reverse. For a normal distribution, the density is not very useful to us, but if we were looking at a discrete distribution, that would give us a probability for a given point on our distribution as well. So maybe we can try this R norm, and again, if we scroll down, you can see they've got some different examples in there that we can copy and paste and have a go of if we would like. Okay, so let's go back to R, and so I'm going to have 100 random numbers, and I'm going to have a mean. This time I'm going to have a mean of 5, and I have a standard deviation of 2. And so we can see that these numbers have come out of that particular normal distribution. Let's suppose I wanted to do a histogram. So there's a function for histogram, which is just HIST, and I could go about it two ways. I could assign, so using my assign and assign this into a vector, then feed it into the histogram, or I could put it straight inside the histogram. So we can probably actually do that both ways. So our first way, HIST, really important to remember that R is case sensitive, so making sure we don't upset it with uppercase. And here we go, we can see that I have my histogram. Yep, definitely looks like a bell curve. There was only 100 numbers, so not a perfect bell curve. As that number got bigger, to get more closer to a bell curve. The other way we could have done it is we can assign, so X is going to hold all of those random numbers, and then we can take the histogram of X. And there's our histogram again. And you can see still bell curve shape, slightly different to the last one because of course these are random numbers, so each time I generate a set of random numbers it won't be quite the same. Okay, so the last function that we're going to look at is the read table function. So in order to read in data, if we're using RStudio, there's actually just a button we can use. If we're here at the command prompt, then we are going to have to use this function called read table, or if it's a CSV file, then we've also got read.csv. So it's a function, so it's going to have some round brackets. Inside the round brackets, I can put the path to my file, or I can put in another function which brings up a browser. So much easier to have a browser and just click through. And my particular data file has headings on the first line, so I need to tell R that it's going to have headings on the first line. And because it's going to be a CSV file, I need to also tell it that CSV is comma separated variable, so the separator is going to be commas. If I used read.csv, I wouldn't need this last bit. So I hit enter, gives me my browser, and so I can go and find my data file, and I can hit open. And in order to know that my data has actually made it in, I can type in the name of the object I've assigned it to. There's my data, and there's my data file. It's only a little tiny data file. If I was reading in a huge data file, then I might use a function called head, which just tells me about the top few lines. In this case, I only have 6 lines of data. But let's suppose that I read in a several gigabyte file. Rather than have it just scrolling page after page after page, I can go head and it can show me just the top few lines. Okay, so that's just a couple of different functions. I would encourage you to have a look at the course notes and also the Lambda textbook. It's going to cover more functions and a lot more detail than what I can manage to fit into a video.
This has been a Swinburne production.